All right, this is Dr. John Jury, who teaches at Wesley Seminary. John, 6 years ago, you first heard me give this presentation about the admissions mountain, and you have been a real partner with me in the admissions ever since. And I wonder if you could just talk to me a little bit about why that presentation had an impact on you and how you think about admissions and enrollment.
Yeah, so I mean, we were on an all-team retreat, and Aaron just drew this little funnel up on a flip chart and said, "This is the admissions funnel. Yeah, you just get people in here, and here's all the steps, and then out come students." And then he said, "But this isn't really what it's like. This is the way we think of it, but it's really not the truth." And he flipped it over, and he said, "This is the admissions mountain." And he drew this big triangle, and it's like, these are these steps that you gotta drag, and admissions reps are dragging people up this, trying to help them get to the top of this mountain. And for starters, it just immediately like clicked, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's what's really going on. Like, so it immediately rung true. And then in our dialogues and partnering then over the years, it's made a huge difference just in even understanding how to communicate, especially faculty concerns. Like, when you run into, students, their writing isn't as good as it used to be or whatever. It's stuff the faculty complain about, right? And you're like, so then you say, add a writing sample to the application, right? You tend to just kind of throw every concern at the admissions mountain. But learning that it's a mountain, then you understand the problem of just throwing more snow on the mountain and making it harder to climb. And so it's made it so that every time a concern has come up, we've been able to really dialogue about how do we not make it harder for students to apply, even if sometimes it's a real concern. Right? So even a real concern, how are we real strategic? Where does it go on the mountain? These kinds of things. So it's just really helped even just in being able to communicate and partner with the enrollment team.
So, John, there was recently a conversation we had about adding a step to the Doctorate of Ministry application. Could you talk a little bit about where we got to where we landed?
Yeah, so we were, the DMin, the Doctorate of Ministry application only requires the master's transcripts, understandably, because master's itself presupposes undergraduate transcripts. But for some students who are doing MDiv equivalency, and so maybe they're just right on the line, they've got enough credits, but it's like they've got some weird classes in there that aren't really seminary classes, and you're trying to figure out what's the MDiv equivalency. I found myself regularly saying, I just want to see their undergraduate transcripts, because if like they did this like ministry major or a theology or religion major in undergraduate, that's going to tell me a lot that they were in their master's work actually expanding themselves. So all of a sudden the peculiarity of their MDiv equivalence actually becomes a kind of enhancer, a benefit rather, because they have that background. So that kept coming up, but I already had this concept in mind. So I kept saying, at Aaron, well, I don't want to add a step to the admissions mountain. I know that's going to be a step. It's going to cost. They're going to have to pay for that transcript. How do we bring that out? And so we were able to have a dialogue point to kind of, and I think where we landed was to get the word out to the enrollment team to say, let students know, especially ones who don't have an MDiv but have an MDiv equivalency process, to let them know, hey, you're welcome to send in your undergraduate transcripts if you believe that will help enhance your application, instead of just requiring it for everybody, right? So a fast solution, if you're just thinking in funnel, you just say, add it,
Mm-hmm.
But when you're thinking mountain, I say, I don't want to make it harder in general for everybody to get up the mountain. I just wanted, I really wanted it, because I think some students, it's going to actually help them get up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all I was really realizing is there's a handful of students who are going to get up the mountain precisely because of their undergraduate transcript, but it's just going to be a burden for the other 80-90%. So that was one place where that concept actually really helped us find a solution that sort of took care of the
Mountain changed your perception of how you engage with enrollment or admissions or recruitment.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I can think of two things. The first is just attitudinal. I mean, as a faculty member, I suffer from the temptation to think that admissions folks are just trying to grab every random person and throw them in the funnel, right? I mean, it's the the attitude that faculty culture can have sometimes. Just like I'm sure admissions folks have their thoughts about faculty, right? So it's helped me to kind of see them as doing this very difficult work and actually even participating in the first stages of the formation process, right? So it feels much more like a sort of handoff. The enrollment team is really like that first encounter of moving, because, I mean, of course, education we don't think of as a funnel. Once they're at being of course, it's already a mountain. In a way, it brings, I guess I'm bearing the lead here, so, but it really brings the enrollment work and the education work into continuity with each other, right? Rather than a funnel into something that we do some other thing. Because education is naturally thought of as a mountain that you're moving up, and teachers as guides working your way up, right? And a cohort of students as a class that moves up the mountain towards greater and greater knowledge and insight, right? So that's already a natural way to kind of think of education. And so it kind of sees that as a kind of much more continuous process from enrollment to education. And it makes me want to just be more supportive and positive and encouraging towards the enrollment team. Honestly, it just helps my attitude, because I just see it as hard work rather than just mere quantity. You know, there's like a quality and an insight and a strategy about it that really helps. And I hinted at the strategic thing. That was the other thing, is to helps me think strategically about enrollment, because funnel thinking makes it seem like it's all just about bodies and names on cards. It's all just leads, you know, and it's shotgun, right? And whereas, like, there's this strategic thinking that comes into thinking about, like, how's the best way to get up the mountain, right? Where's the best place for base camp? You know, I mean, you can stretch the metaphor too far, but, you know, like, to kind of, and it's helped me, honestly, it's helped me with, like, just trust, right? To say, there's a thing I would like to be a part of, you know, the matriculation standards for students. We've had things like that. Ethos statement was one, other things that have come up. And just trusting that the enrollment team's the one who's going to know where this belongs on the mountain, you know? That there might be the right sequence that makes things smoother for students, and to not impose too quickly a way of thinking that just thinks of it as just a stack of requirements, you know? So it's more that kind of strategic thinking has been kind of helpful, including even my own involvement. It's like, how can I be the most helpful? You know, it's not just, you know, am I the guy to get leads? You know, probably not. It's probably not the best use of my time, right? But there can be those key moments when it's like, John, I need you to make a call to this guy. He's on the line. You know, you're going to help him. Like, so I know when I'm getting asked to make a phone call or to meet with a student that's visiting, like, I know that I'm being asked to kind of help someone move one step up the mountain. So even though I'm not one of the main guides, I can play a role in that process. So it's just helping kind of see the more strategic approach that's being engaged in with enrollment. So that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.